All right, welcome to another episode of Ask the Author. I am here today with Kim Sorrelle. Kim is an entrepreneur, director of a nonprofit organization, and lover of all people. 4 months after receiving a breast cancer diagnosis, her husband Steve was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, passing away just 6 weeks later. Kim began questioning the true meaning of love, so she decided to take a year to figure it out. The things that she discovered about love are unlike anything you've heard of before, and she chronicled it in her new book, Love Is. But today, we are here to talk about the book that she wrote about her and Steve's cancer journey. Cry Until You Laugh. Did I get it right, Kim?
You sure did.
Okay, good. And I've interviewed Kim before, so stay tuned for the Cancer Youth Thrivers podcast. And I just, she is so funny, and you will discover that during this interview, but also if you read her book. And I wanted to start the interview with something that she said that I thought was just so spot on and struck me in such a positive way. It really upsets me when people say time heals all wounds, because I think it's a very trite thing to say. And I think the people who say it mean well, but have not gone through something that may not necessarily ever heal. I mean, some things just don't. But the way Kim puts it in her book is time lessens the pain without erasing the memories. So, Kim, can you talk about that for just a moment?
I am Team Andrea on this one. It's so true. I think people are very well-meaning, and you don't know what to say. People don't know what to say. But I never liked hearing you need to move on, because move on. You don't move on. Like, it's not like this part of your life ends. This part of your life doesn't end. It's part of your life. Your life is your life. It's not like it's broken up into segments and you can just dismiss what has happened before. So yeah, moving on, or time heals all wounds. There will always be this part of your heart that misses your sister. There will always be this empty spot in my heart for Steve that nothing can fill.
Yeah.
Nothing can fill. And the hurt, certainly at the beginning, is worse. Is more devastating, but the hurt doesn't go away. And fortunately, we have the memories. And so, you live with the hurt, but you get the memories.
So from writer to writer, did you find it difficult writing the first draft of that book? Because that was, people say, oh, writing is, very cathartic. It was not for me. Like, that first draft to get all the content out was incredibly painful for me.
Well, I wrote as I went. So when I started writing, I didn't really intend for it to be a book. I just started writing really as a way to update family and friends. Hey, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow, instead of calling 25 people, whatever. And so, but the emails that I was writing were more than just, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow. It was more about what I was really going through, how I was feeling about it.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, 5,000 people were reading my emails, because people were passing them on to people. Right. So I was getting emails from all over the world, which was really cool. People were wonderful. Yeah. People were great. But so I strictly wrote as I went, when I felt like sitting down and writing. And so I wrote for a little over a year. And to be honest, Andrea, I have never gone back. I've never read it. I've never read what I wrote.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't recommend it. Because it took a long time. I finally went back and read my book as a reader, not editing mode. Like, it had been out for a while. I sat down, I cracked open my own book. And I found like one or two things, once again, I would have changed, that I was super irritated about. Like, left brain person was just like, but then also, like, I didn't even want to finish my own book. I was in so much pain. I was like, oh gosh, this is a lot. This is a lot. I mean, I did, but it was a lot. So yeah, I don't recommend it. Don't do it.
Okay. All right. Your recommendation. Thank you. Let me off the hook.
And whether you're watching now, watching later, if you have any comments, questions, please put them in the chat. We might not be able to see them from Facebook and YouTube while we're live, but we can see them from LinkedIn. So please put them in the chat. I want to ask you about, again, another keen observation. So true. And I've heard this from many people. Waiting is something you get very good at when you are diagnosed with cancer. So can you talk a little bit about this?
It's so hard when you want answers today. You don't want answers next week. And you can't get answers today. And so you get this diagnosis, you're told something, but you don't know everything. And you have to wait. And it is painful. It's so difficult to wait. I almost wish that doctors would wait until they had the whole picture and then just sat down with you and go, okay, well, this is what we're facing. These are your choices. This is what we're looking at, instead of sort of piecemealing it. But maybe, I don't know, maybe as a human, it's better to get it a little piecemealed, but it is hard to wait to see what's working, wait for the next steps, wait for the, biopsy to come back, all those things. It's a waiting game, and you have to be patient.
I want to stick with your diagnosis right now, but I just want to make this comment. There was a lot of waiting with Steve, though, wasn't there?
Yes. A lot of waiting with Steve. Yeah.
So let's talk about this. I don't know why I laugh when I read this. So you wrote, I really never believed I had cancer. What did you mean by that? Because you went through all the steps. You did all the things you needed to do. So tell us what you meant.
Well, I think it's because it's not something you see in the mirror, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's something that's internal, that you don't see it. I didn't ever see my cancer. They threw it away or whatever, right? So I don't know. There's something about not seeing it that you go, wow, is that really happening inside of me? That just seemed surreal, just seemed hard to believe that. Are you sure it's me? My name is on that record? Because it was just hard to believe.
Yeah, especially if you're not having a lot of symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
I can see that. I mean, it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you actually had more pain after when the expanders were put in. A lot of pain throughout that. I got the feeling. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had a little pain before, but then read that breast cancer is not painful. So thought, well, it can't be breast cancer then, because I've got some pain. But no, the pain was absolutely after, not the before.
Yeah. So we talked about this before we went live. I love this. And I didn't put the whole quote here, but you talk about how this is the beginning of the quote. The doctor's diagnosis is a reflection of truth. And I told you how we had an episode where my sister took a really weird turn. Something was going wrong while she was in her third round of chemo, and she was having this crazy reaction to kind of everything. And so, of course, more scans were ordered. And her oncologist, her gastroenterologist, and the radiologist all had a different opinion of what they saw on the scan. And they really, really vehemently disagreed with each other. And they did this in front of my sister in her room, and then told me that I had to decide what to do next, because all three of them were recommending something different. And again, I think it's exactly what you said. It was a reflection, of what they believed. And so talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, there's no exact science to it.
You would think there would be, though.
I know. It's been a while for me, from my husband, for you, for your sister. And so you would think that there would be more,
right?
That there would just be this rule. Okay, this is your cancer. This is what you do. This is what your next step is. This is the outcome. And there's not. Everything is so individual and changing all the time. And what works for somebody doesn't work for somebody else. And doctors, I think, do the best they can with the information they have. Yeah. But they're not God, and they don't know everything. Yeah. And so I think you have to be your own advocate, and you have to research. They tell you, don't Google it, whatever. But honestly, you got to have a friend of a friend. You need to have somebody to help you along the way. Yeah. Because there are decisions you have to make. And sometimes you go against what the doctor has to say. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. And it is okay. You do what's right for you. Absolutely. And in
Yeah.
your case, I can't even imagine. You're getting 3 opinions by 3 doctors in front of your sister. And then they say, go ahead, you make the choice.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cockfight. Like,
Yeah, it really felt that way. They were all men, to be clear. It's funny because I just decided I was going to go with radiologist because I figured it was his job to actually look at scans. Like that was his job, not the other 2 doctors. They were just interpreting what they thought, but that was not their specialty. So I went with him for that. And also because he was recommending no treatment. Let's kind of wait and see. Whereas the other 2 doctors wanted to just pummel her with more medication. And it turned out it was the right call. I mean, but it could have been the wrong thing to do. It just turned out it was the right thing to do. And whatever it was, they never figured out what it was, but it was gone within like a day or 2. But the last thing she needed was more medication. It
right.
was too much. It was way too much.
Well, and I think that's a good point, Andrea. I think that's another thing is that nobody knows you like you know you. And nobody's going to know your sister, your spouse, your whoever like you do.
Yeah.
And you go into a medical situation and go into the hospital, go into the office, whatever. Well, they've seen a bunch of who they think you are.
Yeah.
But you know your body. You know, she knows her body. He knows his body. And doctors need to listen more, I believe. Some doctors are great about it, but doctors need to listen more. I was just with my great nephew, I told you, who unfortunately, poor little baby has cancer. And I was there, and the whole time I was there, people were coming in and out. And my niece was saying, his heart rate's going up. We should look at this. His heart rate's going up. Everybody ignored her. And then finally someone came in and said, wow, his heart rate's really up. We need to do something. God. It's like, oh my word. So you do, your body more than anyone. You got to have an advocate, be your own advocate for sure.
Okay, now I just have to share this because we're going to get into some womanly topics here, so you'll appreciate this. I went to the ER. I had only lived here in Birmingham about a year, so this is about 6 years ago. I went to the ER because I could not physically stand. I was in so much pain, and I'd had this pain kind of come and going, and I knew it was lady parts pain, as I like to call it, but it was something was off. And I go to the ER, and this doctor was so arrogant. He was like, it's GI. You're fine. You have gas. I said, dude, I know what that feels like. Like, I know what gas feels like. I know. And yes, I have my own GI issues. I told this, look at where I'm pointing. This is clearly in or around my uterus. I'm showing you. Like, so finally, I had to argue with him just to get a scan. It's like, I pay my insurance. Do it. Just do it. And he came back. He did not apologize. He said, well, okay, you have a fibroid actually outside your uterus, but it's still a uterine fibroid. And it's the size of, what did he say? Golf ball. And I'm a pretty small person. And I said, so that's what's causing my pain. He said, yeah, probably, but you probably have gas too.
Oh my word.
He just had to be right.
Yeah.
And I said, no, that's what's causing my pain. And I'm going to go, thank you very much. Please send that to my gynecologist and I will follow up. And then we're going to get back to you. I'm going to shut up. The gynecologist that I had, I'd only seen once or twice. I just kind of picked her. She had good reviews, female. She dismissed it, totally dismissed it. And I just looked at her. I said, okay, look at my size. This is the size of a golf ball. And I have a really high pain tolerance and I can't stand sometimes. That doesn't work for me. Ended up getting a new gynecologist.
Wow.
I just, because she wouldn't remove it. She's like, it'll be fine.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So I think it was even worse to have a woman be patronizing. Like that was worse.
Yeah. There's a cynicism that kind of sets in sometimes, I think.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Sliding into more female issues before I pull up one of the funniest things. Tell everyone why you ended up having to have a hysterectomy.
Well, my cancer had hormone receptors. So it was not a matter of if, more a matter of when.
Right.
Uterine, ovarian cancer would happen. So the best thing to do is just get it all removed and not have to deal with the hormone part of it, which was the best surgery of my life, by the way, to not have that monthly inconvenience anymore that we try to make our teenage daughters feel good about. Oh, you're a woman.
Yeah, no, there's nothing good about
This
it.
is so great, right? Yeah, but no, nobody likes that. And to not have it anymore, I was cool with.
Yeah, but you were, just so people who don't understand, and not just men, but maybe some women as well, when you have a hysterectomy the way that you did, and the way that I ended up having as well, you are thrown into menopause, like post-surgical menopause, which is very different than going through it naturally. So before we talk about the 7 dwarfs and what that even means, we got to talk about this. So this made me laugh so hard. If nothing else, the women out there need to read Kim's book just for this. You had people sending you emails, these uplifting emails about the change. I laughed so hard because I was like, who are these people in her life? No one did that for me. Everyone was like, ooh, that sounds scary. I mean, who are these people that are sending you these emails? I mean, you didn't believe them.
So. No. Well, people are well-meaning, but you know what's interesting is it either throws you right into menopause or you skip it altogether.
Don't tell me you skipped it. Don't tell me you skipped it.
I'm sorry to say, I've never had a hot flash. I've never had anything. And a couple of years later, my sister-in-law had the same surgery for different reasons. And she told her doctor, don't give me the patch, don't give me anything. Because in my case, the hormones would have been bad for me. Like I couldn't do
you could do them. Yeah.
In her case, entirely different. And she said, my sister-in-law never, no hot flash, nothing. So I'm going to be that person too. And like 2 days later, my brother's calling the doctor begging for something because it threw her into some bad ways. I think she had her bags packed, ready to leave the family, like it was bad. So yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay, Kim, I like you just a little less now. So. Although I had a friend for years that thought she would, although you're older than her, so I think you're in the clear. I had a friend for years that thought she was never going to go through menopause. Like she was through it, but never had any symptoms, and then like all of a sudden, like in her mid 50s, for whatever reason, like there's just this like lag time. But I don't know. It never occurred to me that I wouldn't. Like it never occurred to me, I guess. I wish that had occurred to me, but it just didn't. And I don't think I was any younger than you. I was in my 40s. I mean, 46, I think.
I was 47.
Yeah. So same age, but I mean, gosh, it's been 2.5 years, and last night, and I'm not on any hormones or anything anymore, but last night I was like, okay, so I'm hot. It's going to have to be 66 degrees tonight. Sorry. It's just, so I said to my partner, it's either 66 degrees or I go sleep in the living room, just because we're in an older house. Living room faces the front. It's much cooler in our living room, no matter what. And he was like, okay, fine. And he just put on all these covers. Because it's just, it's much better than it was. But oh man, it just, all right. So let's talk about, you were so worried about it. Now I found out you skipped it all together. But can you please tell everyone what the 7 dwarfs of menopause are?
I don't have the list in front of me, but they're itchy, bitchy, rashy, grumpy. You have the list?
I'm just trying to pull it up because it cracked me up to like no end. I was dying laughing. I got to see if I can find it because it was so funny. Oh, goodness gracious. It's not going to let me find it. Hold on. This is too good. Stick with us. Let's see. This is just too funny. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Here we go. Itchy, bitchy, forgetful. That's a good one. Grumpy, flashy, weepy, pudgy. So funny. Oh my God. So funny. You didn't experience any of this. None of it.
No, I probably blamed some things, like if I got grumpy, I'd go, menopause, but I didn't really. So gained a couple pounds. Sorry, menopause.
Okay, that's so funny. Oh goodness. All right. So one of the things I love is that you talk about blame versus chance. and with any sort of serious diagnosis. So could you dive into that a little bit? Because I thought your point of view on this was very interesting.
Yeah, well, one of the things that people would say to me right after I got diagnosed, or even throughout, would say, "Ah, why you? Why you?" And I'd say, you're nice, you do nice things, whatever. And I'd say, well, why not me? Why would I be immune? Why would I be immune? And people like to blame things. Well, shoot, you like sugar a little too much, or all those Diet Cokes, or people like to blame something, or for your cancer, or you like to blame, you want to blame something because why can it happen?
Yeah.
But cancer does not discriminate.
No.
Cancer can happen to anybody, anytime. And it's not a matter of blame. I mean, there are a couple cancers that are related to environmental issues. My dad was in the Navy and ended up with mesothelioma from asbestos.
That's very direct.
He
Yeah.
can blame the Navy.
Yeah.
He's allowed to blame the Navy, and he passed away from that. But there are very few cancers that are like that you get to blame anything.
Yeah.
So blaming is just a waste of energy.
I love that. I know a woman I interviewed that she had this sort of underlying fear of cancer or anything like cancer. And so she lived as cleanly as possible from not only just organic food. She refused to use plastic, and she never used a microwave. And I mean, and she was not much younger than me. And I'm like, how do you get this far in life and not use a microwave? I mean, even if you cook, just to heat up stuff, and she wouldn't do it. And then she ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer. And then she realized, well, maybe it's okay to use the microwave, and maybe it's okay to have plastic occasionally, and maybe it's all right to have a cookie, because she had lived what she thought was a perfect and clean life, and it didn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It didn't make a difference. It happened. So another thing we talked about before we went live is one of the things that just drove me absolutely crazy was when, and I only had really one person who said this consistently, but God only gives you what you can handle. And I just hated the implication of that because I'm a strong person, because my sister was strong. That's why we got this. It did, like the logic didn't make sense to me. And I love that you talk about that sort of idea, and then you say God does not give us bad things. And you even told me that it's like it's misunderstanding a Bible verse. So what is the actual verse?
Well, what it actually says is that when you have more than you can handle, God fills in the gap. God is there for you. And for some reason, people think that the Bible says God will not give you more than you can handle. And they use that all the time. I've seen it on billboards, I think, it's everywhere. But it's not what the Bible says. And it's not true. I agree with you entirely. Like, it's not because you're strong, you get this, and somebody else who's not doesn't get it. Again, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Cancer doesn't go around going, geez, I don't know, she's a little weak. Maybe I won't go there with her. But her mother is a rock. I'm going there.
I know.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It doesn't even make sense. I appreciate that on such a deep level. I lost a friend over that. She never said she was sorry. And it just, and I really didn't understand it coming from her, because she's a healthcare provider. I'm like, how can you, the actual science and biology behind all of this? Like, I don't understand at all that's what you can say to me. And I know it's just because she didn't know what else to say, but
but I think that's a good warning to people, really, that don't say that.
No.
Because first of all, I also believe God doesn't give it to you. There's disease in the world.
Yeah.
God does not smite us. That's not the God I love.
Yeah.
He's not up there, pointing a finger going, she's not been very good this week. I think I'll give her a big lump somewhere. Yeah. So yeah, God doesn't give it to us to begin with. There's disease in the world. We live in a world where there is disease.
That was and I know you may feel differently, that was one of my difficulties with praying, because I was trying to think about it, and lots of people were praying for my sister. So I wasn't worried about in terms of like, there were lots of prayers out there, but like for me personally, I only prayed twice. And one time they thought just for like a whole 30 seconds that she might have ovarian cancer instead of liver cancer. And I prayed for that. It was like, okay, she can live without her ovaries. Like, it would suck, but she can do it. And then the second time I prayed was in the chapel at the hospital, and I just prayed for it to be me. Like, can we just, like, I just bargained like unbelievably. But I had a hard time praying because I didn't want to believe in a God that was able to do this, who would smite people. So therefore, if God doesn't cause it, then how can he fix it? And so I was really torn up about it. And then I read this there's a great book. I don't know if you've read it, When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by a rabbi. And he lost his son. I think his son was 12 when he died from leukemia. And he talks about that very concept. And he says it much better than I do, about how, this whole idea of praying. You can pray for, you can pray for healing, you can pray for things, but to pray for a miracle, kind of implies that God, has the ability to cause it or not. So again, you may not agree, but I really appreciate you saying that God doesn't do this.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I hear where you're coming from. I think it can be really difficult to pray when you're in the middle of it, when it's you and you're in the middle of it. I think it can be very easy to be angry.
Yeah.
And I think those are very normal, natural things. And I think it can be very easy to question if God even exists. Is there really a God? Because if there is, why is he allowing this to happen? Right?
Yeah.
All of those things, I think, are just normal human feelings. And prayer can be so much more than just about a healing, right?
Like, I got that from you.
Peace.
Yeah.
We need more. We need mercy and grace and all the other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely got that from your book. I really did. And I appreciated it. So I want to read this before we talk about the next topic. So this is how Kim describes Steve in her book fairly early on. I am talking in love, not just love, not like, but that butterflies in the stomach, can't wait to see him, forgiving of morning breath kind of love. So tell us how and when you met Steve, and then let's talk about him and his diagnosis and what happened.
Well, I was going to be the first woman president. That was my plan. And so in
She's serious. That's okay.
Yeah. And so in high school, I had my life laid out. I knew what I was going to do. And getting married and having children did not fit into the equation because I had too much to do. And then May of my senior year in high school, I was 17 years old. And this gorgeous 6'3" hunk of man walked in the room, and I went, holy cow, what is this? What is this? And so I had a conversation with him, and I thought, oh my gosh, no matter what, I want to be this guy's friend. No matter what. During the conversation, I was thinking that. And we were at a party, and he was 4 years older than I was. So there might have been liquor there because we could buy it. I don't know. But anyway, so we talked, and it was such a great conversation. And then he asked if he could drive me home. And I was like, yes, you can drive me home. And then he drove me home. And then I thought, oh my gosh, if I never see him again, I will never forget this night. I will never forget it. And then he said, can I see you again? And I said, yes. And this was a Saturday. And I thought for sure he'd say, like the next weekend. He said, how about tomorrow? I went, yes. Tomorrow works. Tomorrow is great. Yeah. So then we were together nearly every day since that moment. And
and tell everybody when you proposed. When you proposed.
Yeah, I proposed. Yeah. So I was not going to let this go. Like, this was just too good to be true. And so 10 days after we met, I asked him if he would marry me, and he said yes. And we got
Oh,
married a little less than a year later.
oh, it's such a beautiful love story. My dad and my stepmother. My dad had a horrible marriage with my mother. My stepmother had two very short, not so great marriages, and they met sort of through a friend accidentally at a play. And then my dad called that friend and got her number, and they went out on the first date, and they were together for like 2 solid weeks. And then exactly 2 weeks after their first date, my dad asked her to marry him. And my dad, I mean, the divorce had just been final. Her divorce had just been final. They both had kids. And her response was, "What took you so long?"
Oh, that's so sweet.
It is so sweet. And they've been together, oh my goodness. Yeah, I guess over 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So she didn't mind the morning breath either.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, gosh, they've been together. Now I'm trying to think about it with my age and everything. 38 years, maybe.
Wow.
I hope I got that right. 38. Yeah, 38 plus. Yeah. So it was. Yeah, it was really. It was great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It wasn't easy as a kid, but it's a really beautiful story. And my partner now, he is my Steve, and we were just communicating via email. We met through a mutual friend. It was actually not like a romantic setup. And there was just something, like even an email, it was just really, there was something there. Like we just got each other's humor. And he said, "How would you feel?" He emails me, "How would you feel?" This was 2 weeks in, "if I drove up there and took you out on a date?" And like my immediate response was, "Yes, yes, yes, yes." And I was going through a divorce and he was divorced. And, it was great. And we were long distance for that first year because I had already moved to Birmingham, but he lived in South Florida where he's from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, yeah, when you find your person, whenever that is, you don't want to let that go.
Right. So true. So true. I love your story. That's
Thank
sweet.
you. Well, I love yours. So tell us about Steve. I know it took a long time to get him diagnosed properly. He had been having pain while you were going through everything with you. And tell us what happened.
Yeah. So a couple weeks after I was diagnosed, Steve started having the severe abdominal pain, weird abdominal pain. So he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's because of what Kim's going through. Just take some Rolaids, take some Tums, whatever."
Just anxiety, right? That's
just anxiety. So 2 months later, he went back to the doctor again because it wasn't getting any better. And he knew that it was not a stomach pain he had had before.
right.
It felt different than anything he'd had before. And the doctor again said, "Well, I'm sure it's because of your wife, but I'll make an appointment for you," kind of pacifying him, I think. "I'll make an appointment for you at a gastro guy." So then he had the appointment, and I'm the mouth of the family. He was the nice one. So I would be the one to go and say, "Okay, we're not leaving until you run a test, until you do something. You got to set up something, whatever." Right. But the day that his appointment, and it took 2 months to get an appointment at a gastro doctor. I don't know why, but it did. And that day happened to be the day before my complete hysterectomy. And I was also at the same time having a colonoscopy because the kind of breast cancer I have can go along with colon cancer.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the lovely Miralax clean out and could not be far from a bathroom.
No, you cannot. I've been there. You cannot.
No. So Steve went to the doctor by himself.
Mm.
And not that he's not capable, but he's not going to be pushy like I would be. And he came home, and I said, "So what's going on? What's up? What's up?" And he said, "Well, she said the same thing. I didn't see the doctor. I saw a PA, and she said the same thing. And so I got nowhere." So the next day I had the surgery. And then while they were in there, they found bladder cancer at the same time, which whatever. It's very manageable. They just removed it, and I go once a year, and all is well. But so I'm still, in my bed watching Grey's Anatomy reruns, wearing something you would never be seen in, right? Like sweat, sweatpants and a sweatshirt. And it was exactly a week later, I woke up and Steve was already awake. And he said, Guy, my stomach, I just don't know. And I said, that's it. You're going to the ER.
Yeah.
At least they'll do something. They'll run a test. They'll do something. They're not going to just leave this. They're going to look for something. So he drove himself to the emergency room. And he was a big rule follower. And so it said no cell phones. So his cell phone was off. So I'm laying in bed trying to call him, of course, not getting anywhere, waiting for a phone call. Finally, he calls me and he said, well, I guess they're going to keep me overnight. And I'm like, keep you overnight? First of all, it's a Friday. You know, what are they going to do on a weekend? And secondly, nobody stays overnight. Like, what is this? And so I threw on some person clothes and I hopped in my car, and in my Vicodin-induced state, I drove like a mad woman to get to the hospital. And I was nearly there and my phone rang again. And I'm being not as much a rule follower, I answered it while driving. And he said, well, I guess there's a spot on my liver. Oh my word. I just started bawling. I was just weeping. I got to the hospital. I don't remember parking my car, but I was going through the whole, mastectomy expander thing. I was sore here. I was sore down below. And I just remember holding all parts of me, trying to run into the hospital, asking where to find my husband. And they told me, and I ran back there, and he was behind a curtain. And I whipped open the curtain, and he's just sitting there like nothing is going on, just sitting on the edge of the bed, just all casual. And I'm bawling. And he said, listen, I am not going to invite you out anymore if this is the way you're going to behave. And I said, listen, buddy, you are not allowed to be funny right now. So we didn't know anything then, but over the next several days, with tests, etc.
It still took some time to get the exact correct diagnosis, though, right? Like
it took some time, and there are cancer markers through blood tests, right?
Right.
The CA-125. And I happened to be reading the last lecture at the time.
Oh no, you weren't.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, I was reading the last lecture. So fabulous book for anyone who hasn't read it. It is a wonderful book, very heart-wrenching, but very, very good. And his levels, so it said his, thousands and the CA and the CA-125. And so the tests were drawn on Saturday. We were going to get results on Sunday morning. And I'm sleeping with him in the hospital bed. I'm not going to leave him. And so I wake up in the morning and we're up for a while. I'm waiting for the doctor to come in. I'm hungry. So I said, all right, I'm running to the cafeteria. If the doctor comes in, don't listen to a word he says. You tell him he cannot talk unless I'm there. Tell him to go see somebody else and come back, because I will literally be gone for 10 minutes.
Right.
So I go down to the cafeteria as quick as I could, paid for something, went back up. The doctor had come and gone. And he said, I told him he's here somewhere. He's going to come back. So I went, hunted him down, had him come back. And the doctor said, well, it's cancer. We don't know exactly what yet, but these are the normal ranges of numbers. These are his numbers. I've never seen numbers this high in my life. I have never seen numbers like this. That's what he said. And I said, well, then your lab made a mistake. If these numbers don't exist in this world, then there was a mistake with the lab. And he said, no, our lab made no mistake. And I said, how do you know your lab didn't, what, nobody's human in your lab? Like they can't make a mistake? They made a mistake. Do it again. And he said, no, we're not going to run it again. They didn't make a mistake. We're not going to do it again. So they had Steve do the Miralax clean out that day, Sunday, and for a colonoscopy the next day and the liver biopsy. And the doctor was sure it was colon cancer. That's what he thought for sure it was. And when I was talking to him, though, on Sunday, I said, well, this hopefully is not pancreatic cancer. His father died 2 years ago with pancreatic cancer. This is what I said to the doctor. And the doctor said, oh, no, there's no way. This is not pancreatic cancer. I guarantee it's not. I went, oh, good, because I sure don't want it to be. So the next day, well, I'm with Steve and he's sleeping because he had the biopsy and the colonoscopy. The doctor comes in and he has pictures. And he said, it's not what I thought it was. He said, you can see the tumors in his colon, but they're coming from the outside pushing in. They're not inside his colon. They're at the such and such part of his colon. And I said, well, is that anywhere near the pancreas? Because I don't know one end of the colon from the other. You know, I use my body. That's all I know. I don't know how it works. And so I don't know those terms and I don't know where it's at. And so I said, is that anywhere near the pancreas? Is it? And he said, will you get off? He yelled at me, will you get off pancreatic cancer? This is not pancreatic cancer. Why do you want your husband to have pancreatic cancer? I said, I don't. I want you to tell me it's not, because I know that diagnosis. I know how bad that is. I don't want it to be. I'm not asking for it, but I don't know that part of the colon. Like, he's yelling at me. And I thought, buddy, my word, if you're married, I pity your wife. Like, what is that? You know, did she get yelled at if the dishes are in the dishwasher the wrong way? Like, my husband's laying there. I mean, help me out. Throw me a bone. Be patient with me. And so then I ended up in the hospital because I ended up with a kidney infection because whatever, because why not?
That's where I think I am in the book. Yeah.
Because I might as well, I guess, end up with a kidney infection. In fact, I was in the emergency room. So it was a short walk for me to go from his hospital room to the emergency room. I was in so much pain. Oh. And I'm laying there and I'm in so much pain. And I've had kidney stones, and kidney stones are horrible. This pain was and I've had babies. This pain was as intense as kidney stones, which is worse than labor. So I'm telling this young resident, give me something for this pain. I'm begging him. And I said, I'm not, look at my arms. There are no tracks. This guy would not give me anything for pain. He wanted to run tests first before he gave me anything. And I'm like, no, please, please. And I was with my sister-in-law was with me, and I'm begging her, go get him, and tell him he has to give me something. I was dying. And he came in and he said, I'm going to wait to give you anything. And I said, pretend I'm your mother. Would you let your mother lay here like this in this amount of pain? Please, please. Finally, he gave me something to relieve my pain. But anyway, so I was in the hospital, and then Steve was released from the hospital and he had an appointment like 2 days later while I'm still in the hospital. So I was wheeled across the street to his first oncology appointment. And that's when we found out that he had pancreatic cancer.
Did that doctor ever apologize?
No.
You know, when I was reading that about the markers and the counts and everything, I really appreciated it, because when my sister was diagnosed, like we knew it was her pediatrician, the ER, and boom, we were in Children's Hospital. And that all happened in 6 hours. And so it was really fast. So we knew going in something was really wrong. But after they had done the biopsy and they had the diagnosis of primary liver cancer that had spread to her lungs, they talked about this, what I didn't know was a tumor marker. Well, some doctors debate that, but it's called AFP, alpha fetoprotein. And some doctors don't like it, some do, but alpha fetoprotein is elevated when you're pregnant, and almost every woman who's ever pregnant. So they don't really like to call it a tumor marker, but most people have liver cancer, their AFP will be elevated. And I still, to this day, have never heard any AFP as high as my sister's, but I didn't know what normal was, and I didn't think to ask. And her AFP when she was admitted was 1.4 million. It wasn't until much later that I looked. Normal AFP is 4 to 7. 4 to 7.
Oh my
And
Lord.
I've met patients who, were in the thousands, 10,000s, even like one patient was in 100,000s. I've never, ever to this day, ever met anyone. And that's when they knew, like, definitively, like, this was definitely this very specific primary liver cancer. And even though she was far too young and not the typical patient, but 1.4 million.
Wow.
And I wish they just told me. Like, I wish they explained, like, given me some context around that number. And again, I didn't know to ask yet. what that even meant. So I really appreciate it. I didn't know you were reading the last lecture at the time, but how helpful was that really to know?
Yeah,
That,
right. I know, to have that information. Yes, very,
yeah,
very helpful. Yeah, and 1.4 million. Holy cow. I mean,
yeah.
anything medical, 1.4 million is probably not good. The only
Right.
1.4 million, maybe if it was they wanted to give you that many dollars, that would be a
Right.
little fun. Otherwise, it is not. That's not a number for
Yeah.
anything really.
Yeah. No, we had no idea. We really did not. All right, I want to switch gears and we'll finish up with Steve. So I want to talk about because you're really open about it, and I just love it in your book about your life as Uma. So tell us what that means. It's so sweet.
So my grandbabies, they call me Uma, like Uma Thurman, not to be confused with Oma, the German Oma. I'm not German. Uma, like Uma Thurman. And I
Where did
like,
that come from?
well, the oldest one, I would be saying, okay, say grandma, say grandma. And she went, Uma, Uma. They just started calling me Uma, and it stuck. So I'm Uma. And we did the same thing with Steve. Say grandpa, say grandpa. And she said, Papa, Papa. So he was Papa. We were Uma and Papa.
Oh,
Yes. And there is nothing in the world like being a grandmother. Nothing compares. You have your first baby and everybody says, oh gosh, just wait, just wait. And you're like, I already love the baby. I know. And then the baby's born and you go, did my mother love me like this? It's so overwhelming. And then you're going to be a grandparent and people say, oh, just wait, just wait. And it's like, I've got kids. I know. And then the baby's born and you're like, forget whoever just gave birth. I want the baby. I just want the baby.
Oh, my partner and I joke. So his oldest is now married. He's in his mid-20s. And I'm like, and I don't think these two are gonna have kids anytime soon. But I'm like, can they just have a baby already so we can borrow it and then send it back? Like that's all I want. I just want to borrow the baby, and because I love babies, I love children. And so how many grandchildren do you have now?
11.
No.
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
5.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you had 5 kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. We were great
Wow.
reproducers, Steve and I.
What's the age range between the youngest and oldest and your kids?
My kids, well, I have an adopted son from the Dominican Republic who's actually my oldest because he was older when he came into our lives. And then of my biological children, my oldest was 4 when my 4th one was born.
Okay. Okay. So really close in age.
Very close in age. Yeah, it was insane. It was a blur.
That's
Those years were just a blur. Yeah, and then people would say, "Oh my gosh, they're all going to be teenagers at the same time." And I thought, "Oh my word, teenagers!" And then I had a friend say, "I love having teenagers," and I thought that's going to be my attitude, and I did. I loved having teenagers. It was great. Yeah,
Yeah.
every age is fun.
Yeah. I I only made it to 15 and a half with my sister, but middle school was really hard. It was hard for her. It was hard for me as a parent. It was hard for me when I was that age. I mean, middle school was once we got through middle school, it just felt like, oh, thank goodness that's behind us. It's really, really tough.
Middle school is tough. It seems to me, I'm not an expert, but the worst time for bullying. It just seems to be the hardest time in a kid's life is middle school. You're a little awkward. You haven't grown into your nose yet. You don't feel great about it. All of a sudden you've got pimples and you've got all this stuff going on with your body and your friends can change and it can be a tough time. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
I definitely, she just blossomed in high school. She was doing better in high school, and middle school was not great. And I was the same way. Funny thing is, years later, I ended up teaching middle school. And now I say, if you can teach middle school, like literally, if you can teach 7th grade, you can teach anything. And because it's just so many hormones. It's like, oh my God, please. And oh gosh, what was I saying? Oh, I used to tease my middle school students, except I wasn't really teasing. They thought I was. I used to say 7th grade was like the worst year of my childhood. And it was. It was horrible. And I taught 7th grade. But oh, that's so nice. That's so nice.
Yeah. Well, there is a cure. I think there's a cure for that. It's called Disney World.
Yeah.
Just take them away and let them forget about all the issues in school for a minute and issues with them. And you
Can
know.
you imagine now, just in the last 2 years with COVID, for people watching this in real time or near real time, can you imagine having kids at home?
I I am they are my hero.
Yeah.
Those people that have had to do that are not getting near enough credit. And actually, all the education dollars, the state should probably be paying them money.
Oh,
Because from
yes.
what I understand, you had to teach at home.
Yeah.
It wasn't just,
And
your
you
kid
can't
watching a computer screen all day.
you can't teach a 6-year-old over Zoom. You
Oh
can't
my.
do it.
Between the teachers and the parents and the nurses and the doctors, I mean, there
I
were a whole lot of people in crisis over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, I know one woman in particular, and I know she loves her children, but she was pretty close to a mental breakdown. She really was because and I will say though, across the board, I think teachers got more appreciation than they ever had before, but I'm so grateful I'm no longer a teacher. Like it's been a long time and so grateful because even I know some teachers, my partner's actually his ex-wife. Um, they went back to school, but some kids still zoomed in and some were in the classroom. Like even as a teacher, how do you manage that? Like that's, you know,
That was
um,
a lot to ask.
it was
That's
a lot to ask. And I taught online like years ago before it was cool, but I was an adjunct professor for college. At least I was teaching adults who volunteered to take the class online, who wanted to be online. And the technology was so bad. This was years and years before Zoom. But, that's different. That's
yeah.
different.
Oh yeah, way different. They already know how to read. That's
Yeah.
teaching a
Yeah.
kid how to read isn't, just
I
doesn't
just
isn't the easiest thing. But
no.
yeah, I don't know. You know what they should have done probably is just had everybody skip a birthday or two and just not do school and just go, oh, you're 6. Oh, next year, guess what? You're 6 again. You get to be 6 again. This is so fun. And because I don't know how they did it. I don't even know. It's a tough one.
I have one more question, but before I ask it, I gotta share this. So I have someone who I consider a friend now, but it started out as a professional relationship. She's an amazing marketer. And before COVID, and that's when I started working with her, she and her husband had planned to, for a year, travel across the country, try to hit every state except Alaska and Hawaii, of course. And they have 4 daughters. And they took off, I want to say in October 2019. I mean, it was right before COVID. And then COVID happens and they had planned this out for a year. They had planned, teaching on the road. She's the breadwinner. Her husband is the teacher and everything and primary parent when she's working. And as long as she has an internet connection, she can work from anywhere. So they had this all mapped out for 1 year. And then because of COVID, they just kept going. And they just circled back across the country, went to their favorite spots, and really started to think about, okay, when this is over, where are we going to settle down? Which place do we like the best? But the whole time, because they already had this plan and it was not connected to COVID, her kids have kept up in school. They're probably like a good year ahead of anyone their age. And now they're finally settling back down, looking for a place to live. I think they decide on somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not sure if they ever decided on a town yet, but and she chronicled everything on Instagram, and it was fascinating. But it was just her kids were living during COVID in a way that I think most kids weren't.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Good for them. Good for
yeah,
them.
and they
And
got to see the whole country, and
what a gift. What a gift to give
yeah,
your kids. That's amazing.
yeah, and I think her kids are like 8 to 14, so not easy ages either. All girls, all girls.
No, if they're 8 to 14, there's somebody in middle school.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I want to wrap this up. I just adore you. And I want to wrap this up with a kind of loaded question and something I just so admire you for. How do you stay in your faith the way that you do, especially after Steve?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to a previous thing that we talked about, the whole blame thing.
Mm,
And who you believe God is. Like my vision of God, my God that I love is loving and caring, and he's about peace and joy and good things, all things good, and would never want anyone to suffer.
yeah.
But he's not a puppet master. So he's not up saying, smite you, don't smite you. Okay, you've suffered enough. Now I'm going to let you off the hook. We have free will. We're individuals, and we can believe whatever we want, and we can do whatever we want. And God isn't directing our every step. And so because I believe that way, it wasn't God that was hurting me in any way. It was solace to me to be able to turn to God and say, oh, I'm at my end. Help me, help me, bring me peace, bring me extra something, whatever it is I need, or sometimes not even being able to pray.
Yeah.
And just saying, you know what, I'm here, whatever you got, I'll take it, whatever. And so losing my faith was never a question. My faith grew, if anything, over that time.
Wow.
Because I just know that there's a higher being. Like it helped a lot to know that there is an afterlife, whatever that looks like. And from what I understand, heaven's pretty cool. So to think that Steve at 51 years old got to go to heaven and never pay another bill, never have another stomach ache or a cold, that he was a wonderful man, and good for him.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. Thank you so, so much. If you want to get Kim's not book, but books, the books are Cry Until You Laugh and Love Is, and that's the newest one, right? It just came out, Love Is.
Right. Yeah.
And where can people find the books? Let's let them know.
Amazon, Book Baby, Bookatopia, any bookseller online. Love Is, because it's newer, is in brick and mortar stores as well. So Barnes and Noble and different places. So it's available everywhere. My website, kimsorrelle.com, it's available there. So, and I am literally the only Kim Sorrelle in the world spelled the way my name is spelled.
2 R's, 2 L's?
Yes, 2 R's, 2 L's, 2 E's. Lots of extra letters. So I'm easy to find everywhere.
Kim, thank you so much for coming on and letting me talk to you about your book. I really appreciate it.
I love talking to you. So thank you so much for having me.